Good day, good day.
Greetings, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life.
Every day I wake up without a chalk outline around me is a good day.
Amen. Amen. Okay, if you look in the chat section, I posted 4 links. There's 4 YouTube videos I did on some stuff here, and this is stuff I did a while back, and it's on import bonds, entrepot, the land conveyed, and where does mutuality come from? You know, and that's what we're talking about today, particularly in Raymond's case here. We're talking about a border situation where there's already a peace treaty in place. There's already mutual agreements. There's already joint strategic plans, joint resolutions, and this and stuff. It's all mutual already. What they're not doing is accepting that you are part of that mutuality. And that's all we're going to express. Hey, you got your mutuality from our God. And basically, those are 4 little videos that I would hope people would watch to give you a basic comprehension of what's happening. We are not subject to the exports and imports. And when it comes to their numbering system, that's entirely relative to exporters. And exporters are the people that are producing things. This is why I say when you give them information, you are the producer of the information. That's what you're producing for them. And it's getting entered into their system of statistics for commercial purposes. Vital statistics, that's regulated by the Department of Commerce, folks. The next one is the link that talks about the harmonized system codes. And I want to touch on this one real quick because that's what I'm talking about. Everything in the world in regards to taxation and production is through the like I said, the one that's producing it, whatever it is, whether it be tangible or intangible. That's what their copyrights, trademarks, and patents are all about. And you're the one giving the information for them to develop all of this their statistics on. And it's all done through the number. And what it is among industry classification systems. Industry classification systems. They classify all of their systems numerically first. They don't say, well, it's the logging industry, so we give it these codes. No, it's a number code, and that pertains to this industry. The next number code pertains to this industry, and the logging industry is broke down into the paper industry and they're all numbered. That's for production and manufacture of gross domestic products, for vital statistics of national importance. And that's what that birth certificate is all about.
Greetings.
Greetings, everybody. Greetings. And so we're going to start out. Oh, looks like I got to start my screen share up again. 19 of the U.S. code is the customs code. And I want people to realize I talk about the post office primarily because they are the primary authority. And we'll see that later. The customs it's written into the U.S. codes, but it is part of the underlying territorial jurisdictions and stuff. It is the commercial part of the customs duties. It's on the tax side. That's why that tax revenue stamp is required on that side. It has to show that the capital transfer tax has already been paid. So now they can possess the capital. They can possess that capital, whatever it be, the asset, the collateral, which is the documentation, whatever, the titles, abstracts, all that, warranties. That's what they're taxing. When we get down in here, Everything from definitive paper form is now being entered into an automated commercial environment. That's what these .com sites are about. That's why I said when I developed my site, I made it a .art domain extension. It's a non-commercial site. You have various sites that are commercial sites. And so when you look up the domain extensions, you've got to check those out. The other one, customs and trade laws of the United States include these down here. This is all of the different, and they're all acts, agreements. They're all agreements. They're already mutually agreed to. So this is all we're going to do is simplify everything and say, hey, we agree to the same things, but not in the commercial sense. And that includes the freedom of transit, which is what is spoken about in the international treaties. UPU, Constitution of Universal Postal Union. The next one is definitions from 6 U.S. Code, and Title 6 is domestic security. And under domestic security, it says custom revenue function. Oh, that's what we were looking for. Custom revenue function. Any provisions of law vesting customs revenue functions in the Secretary of the Treasury. So it's not, like I said, it's not like the customs is the international part. The post office is. The customs is the internal part. It's the mechanism of the Treasury. They have to acquire things. That's their federal acquisitions. It has to come through the customs border and clear customs. So their customs revenue function, and that's what their revenue function is they acquire capital in revenue for profit. So that they acquire it, and it's either for use or sales and distribution, delivery.
So everything is mail and everything is transportation.
Everything is either in the mails or going through the mails in transit. This is why everything is considered transitional living, transitional housing. The military is a transitional force. Everything is transitional, and that's what we've got to recognize is we are in transition. We are
because we're constantly moving, correct?
Say what?
Because we're constantly moving. We're constantly in transit.
Yep, we're ever growing. And this comes to us. Yep, and this comes to assessing and collecting customs duties. So if they're the ones that are assessing and collecting, what are they assessing and collecting? It's what you give them. If you don't give it to them and make clear and concise conditions that if I give it to you, you will have to add so many transitional credits to this account.
And stop giving it to them for free, because we're giving it to them for free without speaking up, acknowledging the contract.
Yep, equal trade. When it comes to the mutuality, again, it's the joint strategic plan, and it's under trade facilitation and trade enforcement. That is the international port of the post office. See, like I said, the warrant officers are Marine Corps security clearanced staff personnel. All the post offices are Marine stations, and they are staff personnel with secret security clearance, pure and simple. And that's why the information that goes into their system must be warranted. In other words, it must warrant the truth. It must be true. Otherwise, it can't. It creates a false record. And they actually don't want false records. And this is why it's important for us to help them fix it. Unfair practices in import trade. Again, if they can't prove that we are importing something into their jurisdiction, then they can't accuse us of exporting and demand that we give them anything, including a number, because a number is an export number. It's an industrial classification number for the purposes of exporting what you are manufacturing in that industry.
So that's the social security number, right?
Yep. And that is intent to export. And what we got to do is withdraw our intent to export.
Gotcha.
Imported articles involving unfair methods of competition or practice. And that is the certificate of live birth from the hospital. It is constructed in trust form and names a contract in it. And then they are holding us to that contract under that number. It's their contract, and we're the authorized representative. The authorized representative giving an authorized signature on the instrument is not liable for the person named in the instrument. It's a very clear commercial code. It's uniform. And if we are the beneficiary of that trust, the beneficiary is not required to do anything. When we are forced to do this stuff, it's important that we know these things so we can put that on the record and let them know, I'm not going to monkey around anymore. You're dismissed. You are operating commercially as a trustee through administration. I'm here to settle these matters once and for all. It's no longer going to continue. They are going to be settled. The next one is Postal Service rules that create an unfair competitive advantage because of what I just said. We are using the mails and purchasing that stamp and entering it into the mail as if it's a contract when we don't even realize that. We're sending private letters in the mail and it's going in as a contract. That's not what the mails are for.
Mm-mm.
Forfeiture authority and procedure. So when it comes to that Customs and Border Patrol guy that put his hands on your woman, did they have the authority from the Postal Service? From the Postal Authority? They
Yeah.
violated an international peace treaty by putting their hands on somebody that was not in their jurisdiction. That is egregious. They are held responsible to one another and to God. This is the Libra Code.
So I need to go after them up under the Postal Service, correct?
Okay, what?
I need to go after them up under the Postal Service?
Correct. It's the Civilian Board of Contract Appeals, Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals. They're going to handle all of it.
Is that number 50 in the Libra code?
That is number 15. That is the last few words of Article 15 in the Libra Code. Responsible to one another and to God.
And you know what's funny that you mentioned that? I have not heard anything from them, but I got an email today where they basically dismissed the case, but he told me that I could appeal it. So
Yes,
I
you
think
want
I'm
it
going to
vacated.
appeal it in the judicial on the postal side.
Exactly. Exactly. You want it vacated because it still exists on their public record. It is to be vacated and the record expunged or whatever your remedy is. You don't have to go that far, but that's what I'm working on. Anyway, the next one, like I said, that civil asset or that civil or that forfeiture authority and procedures is regulated by the Postal Service. Now they go down here and they put general rules for civil forfeiture procedures. These are, if they're using this against you, they can't, that tells you right there, it's a contract.
It was weird the way it's written up. You had to give me your email and I'll send it to you because I was like, it's odd looking. I know it's a contract. I do know that.
Yeah, I'd accept it as a contract to appeal to the higher authority for vacate and expunge, all credits returned. The next one, and you guys might think me funny here, but it says credit union and mutual insurance funds. What is a credit union? Isn't that a mutuality? So if you extend your credit, whether you do so knowingly or not, are you not creating at that moment a credit union?
Right, because the one that I belong to is all only members.
Right.
They're not FDIC. So like when I was trying to get the PPP loan, I couldn't even go through them because they don't accept it because they're a privately owned member bank.
Right. And insurance, again, this is insurity. And if you're mutually agreeing with them, you are co-surety. So let them know, hey, I just realized I'm co-surety. I guess he's co-surety too, but you know what? I've got a receipt here. I'm going to exchange it for full acquittance and discharge. And that means nobody can be sued in any court for any liability. They're no longer liable. It's forgiveness. It's the bankruptcy process.
So
Forgiving
you
all
said you're
debts.
supposed to tell the bank what? What? Repeat that.
We're co-sureties. So let's go through this and forgive everybody's debts. I act in honor. I can show that we have mutual credit. I can show that we have mutual funds. I can show that we are in fact mutually unioned through a signature that has been mistaken. And it's been taking things from me all my life. And granted, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't my fault. So let's relieve everybody of our fault and just return that which belongs to Caesar and that which belongs to our Father, which is in heaven. Done deal. Sounds fair to me. The next one, customer identification program. Like I said, if we're not involved in imports and exports, we're not customers. We are end users. We are the beneficial end user. We are the last mile. It doesn't go beyond us, and it doesn't return back into the system. It means it's not being exported or resold. We are not buying and selling. This is why it's important to comprehend those receipts and give them back for full acquittance and discharge. It proves that we are the end user, the beneficial user, that it's already prepaid. And it's done through the Commodities and Securities Exchange. This is why all of the banking is important. That's how they make their profit, is all those commodity insurance programs. That's why they're called securities. Customer identification program for mutual funds. This is in Title 31.
So that's where SunTrust will come in, correct?
Say what?
That's where kind of SunTrust would come in, wouldn't they? Remember I told you I had an account at SunTrust, and then you pulled that stuff up about them being in the securities.
Yeah, you can prove that they've got a contract with the Title 17 Commodities and Securities program through the statutes. That's a federal acquisitions regulations, and they both operate with contracts with the federal government to acquisition all that they acquisition. Everything. This here is a contract, just like the last one. This is a contract. Every last one of these is a contract. Applicability. Now we're talking agriculture, which is where all of your commodities come from. How does it apply? This part sets forth policies for the direct single-family housing loan program. Oh, let's not take a look at that yet. That's later. Programs and loans. We're going to take a look at those. Operated by the Rural Housing Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So here we have agriculture, Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we're dealing with housing. Are they housing cattle?
I guess that's what we are.
Exactly. Transitional living. You're in a feedlot.
Right.
And you're on transition to the slaughterhouse. Wake up. It addresses the requirements of Section 502 and 504 of the Housing Act of 1949 as amended, and includes policies regarding both loan and grant or origination and servicing. Grant origination. Remember this. We're going to talk about grant later too. Procedures for implementing these regulations. Remember, Title 48 of the Code of Federal Regulations 52.212-5 says, and this is the Federal Acquisitions Regulations, contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders hyphen commercial item. Anytime they're seeking a commercial item through an executive order or a state statute, it has to be a contract. These are contract terms and conditions. Loan, it's a contract term and condition. Grant, it's a contract term and condition. Program, it's a contract term and condition, and they explain them.
And it's up to us to know how to sign.
Correct. The next one, loan purposes. This one here was applicability, and this is purposes. Once you apply them, what is the purpose? Section 502 funds may use to buy, build, rehabilitate, improve, or relocate an eligible dwelling and provide related. So it doesn't have to do anything with the land, does it? It's talking about rehabilitate, build, buy, improve, or relocate, transition, a dwelling. Nothing to do with the land. Okay. That's the purpose of the loan, is to offer you a business opportunity, not to purchase the land. Get
No,
that?
for you to start a business.
Yeah. Advance means transferring funds from RUS or a lender guaranteed by RUS to the borrower's construction fund. That's the only thing they have an advance for, is a construction fund. And that's what you're doing, is you're constructing buildings. That's your business opportunity. Loan funds may not be used to purchase existing manufactured homes or for any other purposes prohibited in 35.73. Dealer contractors. Loans will be made on manufactured homes sold by any entity that is not approved dealer. In addition to a loan restriction, existing. And that's what we're talking about, people. We're loaning ourselves out. We're loaning our services. That's why I say you got to quit giving them the information. Anyway, and again, I'll post all these links when I get done. Chapter 50 is the agricultural credit. Again, if you're the one producing and cultivating the agriculture, the products, where does the credit extend from? Why do you need a loan to buy the buildings to live on the land? Shouldn't you be able to live on the land and exchange the product from the land for buildings? See, that's the problem. Definitions under agriculture, acceleration is the one I wanted to look at, because this is what we want. We want a demand for immediate repayment of the entire balance of a debt if the security instruments are breached. It was breached from day one, folks. It was breached from day one. It was constructed in trust, operated as a contract from there on in, without anybody ever disclosing or teaching anybody about the banking procedure of how that very one document works and operates in the fallacy of he's a respecter of no persons. This is the problem with your public education system. It will not. That's why they took the Lord's Prayer out, all of that. They will not teach you scripture, period. The next one, services. Agricultural marketing services. Remember, it's all vital statistics under the Department of Commerce. And as long as you keep giving them that information, it's for their marketing. And they're going to set their standards. Quality system verification programs. Quality system verification programs assesses an applicant's business. If you're not in the business, they have no right to assess you. If you don't apply, they have no right to assess you. If you don't believe you're actually operating a business and you're just doing what you're meant to do inherently, then what's it any of their business? Because I'm told I'm supposed to go forth and prosper, that to give freely everything that I've been given freely. in prosperity and abundance so we can replenish the earth. And that speaks nothing about commerce or trade. It says giving freely, which in effect and in reality is the actual meaning of tax, to give freely, to donate. Goes down and talks about export certification program. Rather than system verification, it's export certification. And it says a formalized system of documents, processes, and procedures used to validate that a given product, the export, meets the specific requirements of a foreign country that's importing it, in addition to the applicable federal requirements. Down here it says export verification as opposed to export certification. And it says basically basically the same words, but it says something very different. A formalized system of documents, process, and procedures used to validate specific requirements of a foreign country are being met. See, they have to validate the specific requirements that I put forth. And that's the King James Version of the Bible. Psalms 121, verse 8, the Lord shall preserve thy going out from this time forth, or thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore. And what's this even forevermore, from this time forth? Well, he knew me before I was formed in the belly. Before I was captured in the womb, I was sanctified, meaning you can't sanction me commercially or through your commerce or trade. He ordained me, means your ordinances mean nothing to me. And I'm ordained a prophet unto the nations. Therefore, your commercialized prophets in your city dwellings and your counties and townships and states and countries and nations mean nothing. Period. That's the mutuality that must be met. Farmers' Home Administration. Agricultural credit comes from farmers. However, it's not the farmers, it's the farmer's home. Like I said, you're buying a business opportunity and it's the home. And you're supposed to be farming fish. See, the home is supposed to be a boat out in the water farming fish, not a transitional housing unit on land so you can move around and sell your fish. It smells. It's rotten. I ain't buying it no more. Borrower training. My. Check this out, folks. The secretary shall enter into contracts to provide educational training to all borrowers of farmer program direct loans made under this chapter in financial and farm management concepts associated with commercial farming. Here's that definition of farming again, and I'll be damned, I bet none of these people realize they're supposed to be farming fish. Who's that farmer? A farmer includes a person who is engaged in or who, with assistance afforded under this chapter, intends to engage in fish farming. So he not only must be fish farming, it must be his intent. Contract in general.
What is the definition of fish farming?
Well, you've got to be farming fish. You ain't farming cattle. That's
So
ranching.
when you're a farmer, you're supposed to be farming fish.
Yep.
They're not telling you what it really means, basically.
Yep. The secretary may contract with state or private providers of farm management. We'll call it fish farm management if you want, because that's what it is. Farm management and credit counseling services. I would love to step up and start credit counseling these guys, show them where the true credit comes from and how those farms are supposed to be fish farming, including a community college, the extension service of a state department of agriculture, or a nonprofit organization to carry out this section. The consultation. The secretary may consult with the chief executive officer of a state concerning the identity of the contracting organization and the process of contracting. eligibility for loans, loan conditions, guides, payment. A borrower shall pay for training received under this section and may use funds from operating loans made under subchapter 2 to pay for the training. The borrower shall pay for training received under this section and may use funds from operating loans made under this subchapter 2 to pay for the training.
So
do
he's
I not,
recycling
as
the
the
money.
creditor, do I not, as the creditor, the one that extended those funds, allow for the borrower to pay? Yeah. See, they've got everything backwards. Use funds from operating loans already made. See, the government's one that's under the operation of the loan. All we got to do is direct them to pay. It's not up to us to make payment or to pay because it's already prepaid. It's a directive. Why are they asking us to repay loans? Look at your loan documents and look at your legal documents when they accuse you that you failed to repay your loan. Think, people, it says and it tells you repay. Well, if it's repay, doesn't that mean by reason and logic it was already paid? Producer means a person or legal entity who shares in the risk of producing a commodity. If you are not producing commodities and you're merely replenishing the earth in prosperity and abundance as you were directed, I'm just an idiot. I'm not producing nothing. The loan, the provisions, again, it's a provisional code of funds by the agency, the provision of funds by the agency directly to an applicant in exchange for that which was fungible for repayment with interest and collateral to secure repayment. They're right in their own code. They tell you it's a repayment. Well, if it's a repayment, doesn't that say that it's already been paid? What was the pay? The pay was the exchange. Well, if an exchange was made and you agree with it was an equal exchange, well, what was paid in exchange? So if you're asking for me to repay you, what are you going to repay me? Well, here, let's write it down. That's why I'm going to convert when everything's settled, what left over, and revert what belongs to you. Give unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give unto the Father what belongs to the Father. None of this repayment shit anymore. Program any and all individual auditing and accrediting procedures. You're part of the program if you're giving them information, people, because you're the one that's giving them credit to accredit for their audits. Period. Applicant, any person, partnership, limited partnership, trust, consumer, cooperative, corporation, public body, or association that has filed a pre-application, or in the case of the RHS programs that do not require a pre-application, an official application with RHS in anticipation of receiving or utilizing RHS financial assistance. Realize, people, here, the idiocy of this definition, people don't comprehend, is that I'm an applicant and it applies to me, it equally applies to you. It's a mutual agreement. We are both applicants. Period. It's like if you credit, if you're part of the credit, then you're part of the debt. Equally, he's part of the credit and part of the debt. Why is this other third party shit coming on? That's the problem. Clear it up, make it concise. Merger means any transaction in which a credit union transfers all or substantially all of its assets to a bank. So in your credit union, you transferred substantially all of your assets to the bank when you opened up a savings account. You gave them all of your assets, say, here, invest. I want to make a profit. Grant.
I might need to go back and get that.
Yeah. You want to close out all them savings accounts. For the REDG program, this is the Economic Development Grant, Rural Economic Development Grant Program only. A transfer of monies other than a loan. Monies other than a loan tells you, like I said, there's more than one kind of money, right? From rural development to an intermediary or specific use in funding a revolving loan fund. In funding a revolving loan fund. That sounds just like a zero interest drawdown account that zeroes out every so often, huh?
Mhm.
Ultimate recipients. Like I said earlier, the end user. I have the receipt. I am the recipient. That's what that's about. You are the ultimate purchaser, as they call it. You are the end user. You have priority right of use, possession and use. They can claim that title all they want. If they want that title, give it back to them. The title is the receipt. Give it back to them. Discharge it, full acquittance. Grant funds must be repaid by the intermediary to rural development, not by you. It's to be repaid by the intermediary. And this goes when you get a loan. The intermediary is the person. It's to be repaid by the person, not you with Federal Reserve notes, the person. Why does it need to be repaid? I thought it was already paid. Isn't that what I gave you the drawing rights for? What did you do? Fuck up the paperwork? Are you incompetent? Excuse my language. Now that I know too much, they can't keep me quiet. Premises, premises, a real estate term for land and the improvements on it. So if you're getting a real estate loan that doesn't include the premises, then it doesn't include the land. It's just the buildings and fixtures upon the land, including a building, store, apartment, or other designated structure. But unless you claim that premises is the land itself, the soil of the land, the dust of the land, God created man of the dust of the land and breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, and man became a living soul. And he requires the soil of the land to live. Practical utility. The term practical utility means the ability of an agency to use information, particularly the capability to process such information in a timely and useful fashion. And today we have this electronic world that has instant reactions. That's why I say, get a website going. You want my identification? Give them a website. Give them a website. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Our lead system does not apply. Morons. Utilize that. 42 U.S. Code, that's the Social Security Act, folks. Dissemination of information to promote practical use. And this one here happens to be solar heating and cooling technologies. But this is a term that we are looking for throughout their codes and stuff. Practical utilization. What is a transmitting utility? That's anything you can use to transmit the energy or what you need to transmit. And they are known as residents. That's what that transitional housing is. It's got a residence.